Right now, it is time to bring in a shortened edition of Cover Your Assets with Jim Lynch. Jim, of course, has an independent voice on Wall Street, the economy, and politics. He brings well over 40 years of experience to those subjects and more. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Jim Lynch. Good morning, Jim.
And good morning to you, Jill, every loving person out there in Robin Hood Radio. Let's start with the good news. Giants Jets.
That's right.
Time this season. It's fun.
Just fun.
I was going to call you about 19 times, Marshall, as the game was progressing in the Giants game. And then I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to break the luck.
Well, that's exactly right, because people were doing that. They were texting me, and finally
Right.
I put a general text out. Listen, it's the Giants. Don't do anything till the end of the game.
Don't do anything dangerous.
Just don't even breathe.
God.
Don't even
But
breathe.
it was a pleasure. Eli, the old Eli was back, and this kid Barkley. Wow, what a runner!
He's amazing.
What a runner! If he was a little taller, he might remind me of James Brown, of course, Jimmy Brown.
Jimmy Brown. Oh boy. Yeah.
But he's more of a motor guy than Brown. Brown was more of a, he bob and weave and so forth. But it was a delightful Sunday, and then my son's stepson, he had a big day. He roots for Dallas, and wow, what a game!
And
Dallas, Philly, I don't know.
What finished it off for all us non-Patriot fans up here is when the Patriots lost in the last second on that flea flicker. Every Patriot hater was, so that made our day. That was like the cherry.
It was a good Sunday.
That was the cherry on top of the Sunday.
And then the other
you
thing,
say so well.
and then the other thing is nobody here is Theresa May, so that's another good Sunday. It's just another really good way to approach life.
Yeah.
For Theresa.
Okay, some other good thing to talk about, just briefly. Nelson Mandela, 100th birthday celebrated last week in Africa. And the reason I bring him up is because he is an outstanding human being, an outstanding person of courage, who gave the world. His exampleship is just beyond saying, but I think we should all acknowledge him, and I'd love the people who have young kids and so forth to point out that he was a man of courage who did it, overcame it, and basically brought his nation to peace. That on the back of George Bush, who we saw a lot of, another good example. He had his warts, but he was, in essence, a man of democracy, of values. Let's see what else. We're moving on here with the Mueller probe and the Trump demise, and that's coming. I guess it's going to keep coming in steps. I hope not Jarrett, the kid, Fredo, Don Jr. doesn't hurt himself while he's up in Canada. I think he made the wrong move going there, but that's his business. Back to Jared Kushner. You know the name. You've seen it, Mr. Vapid Face. They're talking about maybe he could be implicated as an accessory or as a helper in the murder of our journalist from the Washington Post. He seems to be in bed, I don't know if I mean that literally or figuratively, with this fellow Mohammed in the desert. And, talking to someone like that who's been accused of murder after the murder and counseling him certainly shows you how naive Jared Kushner is and, frankly, how stupid he is. I hope the FBI has their ears well-tuned. I'm not going to say what I'm thinking right now, but in any event, I think he's in the big way. He's in for big trouble.
Yeah, but Jim, what's interesting about this whole situation with Donald Trump and with all the lies and with all the things that are coming up, this has to be handled very, 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 very carefully by the Congress and eventually the courts. The man represents a solid 32 to 35% of this country. It's hard for non-Trump believers to understand and believe, but these people believe in this man so much they completely filter out anything else. And something's going to have to be done to handle this situation so those 35% of Americans don't get more detached, because if they get more detached, we've got real big problems ahead of us in this country.
And
we might have real big problems ahead of us, but I'm going to be a little bit out there with this one. There's 65% of us, and need be we leather up, okay?
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of the 35%. One, I don't believe it. I do not believe it. Where do these numbers come from? 35% has stayed at 35% for 2 years or whatever. That belies mathematical reality. But let's get to something else in terms of these people who voted for Trump and maybe are counted or not counted. As they continue to get their weekly paycheck, particularly those who are on salary, who don't get a bonus, and as the economy continues to slip into recession and they begin to get the fear of losing their job, they're going to realize how conned, what suckers they are. Their pay has hardly gone up a notch. I'm talking a guy making $100,000 or less. Hardly gone up. At the same time, their health benefits have been threatened. The people who got the big dough were those who make millions. They got big dough in a huge cut in their income tax and in a huge increase in the prices of their stocks, not so much anymore, whereby corporations had largesse from the tax cuts, and they used the money not to reinvest in America, not to make America great again, but to buy stock and pay off the rich. The Republican Party has once again become solely the party of the rich. It is devoid of ideas. It is devoid of value. It is devoid of the concept of a democracy. And so I hope that the Republican Party continues to stall on addressing the crimes of the president. Just give me a couple of more months, because that will ensure that the Democrats take back Senate in 2020. Trump will not be around in 2020. I'm looking to take back the Senate. And then I'm looking for all of the overturns of these things that this maniac Trump has done. If you're not reading the paper and paying attention, that's your responsibility as a human being. We are under siege in terms of our climate, in terms of the air we breathe. And people have allowed the politicians to say, oh, no big deal, and at the same time take money from industry, the coal industry, all kinds of industry. So, 15 years from now, when you're gagging on the air, it's you. You're the one to blame, not anybody else.
I sit here and I'm going to say this, but this is my personal opinion.
Marshall, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now? Am I close enough? Can you hear me now?
Wait a minute. I'm going to put it in the good ear. Hold on. Shoot.
All right. I sit here, and I have quite a few of my friends, and I'm not talking just about Facebook friends. I'm talking about personal friends. Okay, that voted in support Donald Trump, and we converse very calmly about Donald Trump. My total rejection of almost everything Donald Trump has done, and their almost total acceptance of everything Donald Trump has done. I find them intelligent. I find them, they're my friends. I don't try to probe why they voted for Donald Trump. I just figured that they were very unhappy with the way the country is. They're not racist. I have friends that are farmers. I have friends that are captains, airline pilots that fly for all walks of life that voted for him up here. And out in the hinterlands, Jim, when you come out into the rural areas, is where you'll find that 30 to 35%. Now that being said, I am a big resistor of Donald Trump, but I do worry. I do worry because these people who are my friends and who are intelligent and who really care about the country. I'm not talking about extremists. They are going to feel shunned, and that's why I'm just saying. I believe something has to happen. I believe we can't keep this country going on the course it's going on. But boy, do I worry about, and I think it's going to change. I think it's going to change back. I really do. I'm just worried about the effect of the people, the good people, and there's a lot of them, that voted for Donald Trump simply because they wanted a change and they weren't offered anything else. I worry about them.
Well, I think
not contributing or zoning out. I do.
It's not about zoning out. It's just about it has been pretty relentless. And the only thing that I'm saying is, and this is why I keep bringing up Brexit, because that is a perfect example. It's a perfect example of the problem that's created when you've got two sides that aren't talking to one another. You've got people who want one thing and people who want another thing, and instead of working their way to how they could get that thing.
Well, that's the problem. There's no in politics, Jim. There's no moderates to moderate between the hardcore Donald Trump supporters and the hardcore non-Donald Trump supporters.
Resistors, and your middle is getting, just pretty much wants to throw up.
Instead of being 65% of this country totally against Donald Trump and 35% in favor of him, what it used to be is you'd have 35%. Or 30% of the people that were solidly for Donald Trump. You'd have 20% in the middle there that were moderates, and then you'd have 50% the other way. That's what we've got. That's what I'm talking about, Jim. I think that's what we have to do. We have to find some way to breach all this together, because something's going to happen here. I don't know what's going to happen, and something's going to happen in the next year. And I just remember, what the total siege that Bill Clinton went under for, I think it was 6 years, a total siege, and what the country looked like. I remember back to Watergate, and back before we had social media, where it took years for Watergate to develop, and then Richard Nixon was named as an unindicted co-conspirator and had to resign. Our Constitution is strong. But we need strong people in leadership positions, the Congress and the House, to make it strong and to make it fair. I think we're in for a real rough patch here, Jim.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I'd like to ask you one question. Can you tell me what exactly people are accepting that Donald Trump has done as president?
They look at the news, okay, and they look at the news, and they think that, okay, he's strong against the border, he is anti-politics. The big thing they really like is that he's not a politician, and that seems to override.
But wait a second. How do they deal with his 6,000 lies?
That goes along with the package. I think they accept it. That's the whole thing. I mean,
why do they accept it?
Jim, I don't ask them why, because I don't want to get into a huge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's rhetorical. It's not a question to you. I'm just saying, why does anybody accept? There's a woman who was out west somewhere, who was in one of these interview things, she said, "Oh yeah, he lies all the time," and then she's followed with, "This is true. This is a true interview somewhere. That's a regular woman, all right, regular person. Oh yeah, I know he lies, but I trust him." How in the name of God can anybody make that sentence work?
Because we made it work when Bill Clinton was president, and he lied to us, and we finally found out he lied to us after a long period of time. And you know what? Our view of him diminished a little bit, but we accepted it.
And I'll simplify it even further. If you line up 10 people on the street and you say, do politicians tell the truth or do they lie? 9 of them are going to say they lie. Now, it's convenient, but that's what happened. I'm just talking about a general human perception, because there's no possibility that what you run on you can actually execute. Can't. So no one really expects pure truth. Difference between a reverend and a politician.
I guess what I want to say is I want to see Donald Trump held for his lies. I want to see Donald Trump held for what his administration is doing. I mean, probably more than anybody else in the world. You take a look at my cars. I resist, but I understand there's something deep in the soul of my friends who are Trump supporters that they just don't accept something, and I'm going to be their friend and try to figure it out and try to help them get through this period. Because it's going to be a rough period. That's all I'm saying, Jim. I agree with everything you're saying. I really do. I am not a person that supports Donald Trump or his administration, but I do support my friends that voted for him, and I just remember how I felt.
Well, I'll tell you, I support your friends as well. I've had this thought now for months. What's going to happen when people wake up as to how they've been duped and how they've continually allowed themselves to be duped? Well, fine, you want change, fine. But just because you got change doesn't mean you got results.
That's right.
And I'm not criticizing the vote right now of people. I am emphasizing with when they finally wake up.
All right. Well,
it's going to be disastrous.
Yep. I agree with it 100%. We're out of time already because we started late. That's too bad because I'd like to continue this. But we continue it next week, Jim.
I think we should continue it next week. Funny you should ask.
That's right. All right.
This is good. This is really good. It was really good. Okay.
All right, Jim.
All right. My prayers and good wishes to your friends and to people everywhere. Goodbye.
Take care.
Sorry I was late.
All right. Bye-bye. Jim Lynch and Cover Your Assets here on Robin Hood Radio.